Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. My name is Richard Burke. This is our Western Liberty Network weekly Saturday training. These training sessions are held every Saturday at 1 p.m. roughly Pacific Standard Time and can always be reached through the links and passcode information provided on the www.westernlibertynetwork.org website. Western Liberty Network is an organization consisting of myself, a board of directors, an advisory committee, and numerous volunteer trainers. WLN's purpose is to help activists reweave the fabric of our political culture by empowering them to take control of their own governance. If you'd like to know more, you can go to westernlibertynetwork.org. And if you'd like to support our efforts, you can go to our support tab and make a tax-deductible financial contribution. Legally, I'm obliged to say this: Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 educational organization. As such, WLN does not endorse or oppose any political party candidate, even the ones we train, ballot measure, or legislation. The statements and other forms of information provided by guest presenters and participants are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Western Liberty Network. I encourage everyone, in the interest of conference etiquette, to silence cell phones and mute yourself unless you'd like to speak. Then go ahead and unmute yourself, and when you're finished speaking, mute yourself again. That will help with extraneous noises, feedback, and so forth. And I will be the trainer today, and what I'm going to be training on is assessing yourself as a candidate for public office. How many folks here are interested in possibly running for office, some local nonpartisan office? Okay, I see.
Trying to look into it.
Yep, I see a couple of people. Their hands are up.
And this is Margot Logan, and I'm going to be running for the school board. Thank you.
Excellent. What district? What school board are you running for?
Portland Public Schools.
Okay, very good. Excellent. We have another person that's joining us now, and this is very good. A couple of you have decided what position that you're going to run for, and that's fantastic. Others of you are looking into possibly running, but you're not sure what you're going to run for. One of the things that this training is designed to do is help you select a position to run for. You know, a lot of people run for high positions. They run for Congress or Portland City Council or the state legislature. And, you know, that's great when you make a run for it. But unfortunately, a lot of activists run for high positions without necessarily being aware of what it takes to win. If you are trying to win the election, you want to make sure that you have the connections, the networks, and the resources to project your message and be able to run. And so as we go through this training today,
I've got a little stand. Right here.
Go ahead and do some honest evaluation of what you want to do. I'll tell you that I ran for governor in 1998 and I got 2% of the vote. I ran on a third-party ticket, but I was elected to 2 local school committees in the Beaverton School District and the Tualatin Valley Water District Board of Directors. I was able to win those particular races because they didn't require all of the that it took to run for a very high office.
Sure. Oh, yeah, might have to unlock it.
One thing I want to say about this training is that if you have a question, go ahead and interrupt me. Don't wait for, don't wait for the end. If you have a comment or a question you'd like to interject, please do so whenever it feels convenient for you. Now, one thing I want to talk about is qualifications. Most of the positions that are out there, fire and rescue, water, park and rec, cemetery control board, any of these positions do not surprisingly require a lot of technical know-how or even any technical know-how. I'll tell you, I was on a water board for 19 years, and I tell you to this day, I still know very little about water and the water industry. What these people are looking for are people with good judgment, good common sense, people who can take in good information and make good decisions in the interest of the public using that information. This is really what they need. Most of these boards have staffs that can provide technical information and provide technical know-how. I would not know the first thing about water pipes or, SCADA, remote monitoring units, or any of the things that were involved with the water district, but that's not what they needed. They needed somebody to be on a board who was able to make good policy decisions in the interests of the constituents. And that's why most of these positions have qualifications that just say you are an eligible voter, you're a US citizen, you live within the district of the entity that you're running for. If you have these things, you are qualified. Do not be intimidated by the fact that you may not have experience working in these particular areas that the boards you're looking at govern. It's okay if you don't have a lot of information. It's great if you do. It doesn't hurt, but it is not required. So please do not feel intimidated. If you're thinking about running or not running, do not let the fact that you may not have experience in the field of the board you're running for stop you. If you have good judgment, if you can respond well to good information, and you meet the legal qualifications, you are qualified to run, and you should go ahead and run. One of the things that I invite people to do is go to your county election office and ask them, what positions am I eligible to run for? They'll give you a list of everything that you're eligible to run for, and fill out paperwork for all of them. And then one thing you can do is go to the election office on the filing deadline day at 4:45 p.m. and see if there are any positions for which nobody ran. And if you see one, hand over the paperwork for that position. And if no one else files by 5 o'clock that day, you will in effect be elected. That's how a lot of people get their start in politics in elected office. They get into a position that nobody else wants to run for. If you want to defeat an incumbent, it can be done. I know people that have done it. I've done it once, but it is really tough. Unless somebody screws up in office, it's really hard to unseat someone in a volunteer municipal office. Most of them win re-election by a margin of something like 60-40. One of the things you want to make sure that you do, if you do run, whether you run unopposed or whether you run with an opponent, is to make sure you file a voter pamphlet statement. Most counties provide for a voter pamphlet statement for the local nonpartisan races that are taking place in their county. It's not very expensive. It reaches every single registered voter with an address, and it is a fantastic way to get your message out, and one of the best ways. Over 30% of all Oregon voters say they use their voter pamphlet to make their decision on who to vote for. So if you decide to run, get a good picture of yourself, preferably taken by a professional photographer. Go ahead and spend a few dollars to get a nice picture taken, and file a voter pamphlet statement. For local positions, it's usually something like $35 to $50, not very much. One of the reasons that I got elected to the Tualatin Valley Water District.
Guys, Don Jr. here.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure everyone knows, guys, we are not done yet. I saw this clip of my father coming off of the golf course, getting a little relaxing time in this weekend, where he said just that.
Mr. President, thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you very much. I haven't finished yet.
Good.
But he's actually accurate. I mean, the reality is this movement isn't.
I'm not sure who that is, but I will say that nobody's done until the end of their life. You do not fail to do something until you decide to quit. And I'm not sure who that was. I want to say it was Margot Logan based on the screen. But this here doesn't have anything in particular to do with the Trump campaign, which I think that did. This has to do with using limited government principles to change governance where we live. And so that's what that is
Oh,
about. Yes.
This is Margot Logan. That wasn't me.
Okay. All right. Thank you for letting us know. I'm not sure who that was.
Yeah, I don't know who that was, but it's
It was
Don
Donna.
Jr. speaking, but it's Don.
Okay. We've got someone else that just came in. Somebody just popped in with us and somebody just left. So before I continue with this, does anyone else want to chime in with a comment or a question? Okay, well, very good. So far we've talked about the decision to run for something, the ability to sort of examine yourself to decide what level of office you can run for and have a reasonable chance of winning, and what makes you qualified to run. There are some other factors that you should consider. One of them is family support. If you're going to run for a local nonpartisan office or really an office of any kind, it's important that you have your family support. I've run for office before when I did not have my spouse's support, and it made it difficult to run, it made it difficult to serve, and it created a lot of problems at home. Make sure that if you are married, if you have a family, talk to your family and tell them what you want to do, and make sure that they are on board before you take this step. Now, bear in mind that a lot of local nonpartisan
Yes, new
offices,
switches.
yes,
Yeah,
they
that
don't-
switch now is your,
Go ahead. Somebody have a comment? Okay, everyone's muted. If you want to talk, go ahead and unmute yourself and talk. And then when you're finished, remute yourself again. But anyway, I was saying that if you do not have your family support when you run for office, there will be problems. That said, most of these positions do not require a great deal of time. When I was with the Tolton Valley Water District that had a constituency of about 250,000 people, I had probably to prepare 2 hours for each monthly board meeting. The board meetings lasted from about 7 to 9 o'clock once a month. And there were a couple of other short meetings during the month. So it took about 6 hours a month to be a commissioner and even to be president of the board on the Tolton Valley Water District. Didn't take a lot of time. Most of the positions that you would be running for, Park and Rec, Soil and Water, all of these are similar or even have less time commitment. So make sure your family is on board, but you can generally tell your family that it is not a large time commitment for most of these positions. If you're running for a school board position, there'll probably be a little bit more of a time commitment, or a city council or a county commissioner, certainly more of a time commitment. But for most of these local nonpartisan commissions, it's not that bad. But in any case, make sure you've got your family on board. The next thing you want to think about are financial resources. How much money do you want to spend to get elected? You can run by doing nothing. If you're running unopposed, you can do that. If you want to, you can spend something as a campaign. And in fact, I encourage everyone to run a campaign. If you've never run for office before and find yourself running unopposed, run a campaign anyway, as if you had an opponent. I say this for several reasons. First, you might want to run for something in the future where you have an opponent to face. And if you run a campaign now as an unopposed candidate, you will get experience in running a campaign. And if you make a mistake, the cost will be small. If you run as a novice in your first contested race, after being elected unopposed, you run a risk of making a mistake, and that could cost you the election. Also, if you run a race unopposed, you have a chance to enlist some volunteer help. Get a cadre of people around you who have some experience in running a campaign. That way, you can keep this group together and deploy them for some other campaign. Maybe you'll run for something else in the future where you have an opponent, or maybe there'll be a ballot measure campaign, or maybe there'll be some issue where you want to enlist some help. If you develop some volunteers running in an unopposed race, you will be able to reassemble those volunteers and use them for something else in the future. I'm going to send something over the message board. This is a companion document that comes with the live training that we provide. This is a Zoom training, but I'm going to send this file to you. You can print this out or distribute it however you see fit. And this is does everybody here know how to, or does anyone here not know how to pull a file from the, there it is, county assessment, here it is.
Yeah, where does it show up at? Oh, there it is in the chat. Okay.
It'll show up on the chat. You can download that and print it, go through it yourself, because I'm going to talk about it here in just a little bit. So make sure you've got some money that you can spend to promote your campaign. Doesn't have to be a lot. I usually just got a couple of banners that I used when I would give a speech to like a chamber of commerce or something like that. A few flyers, maybe a few signs to put up around town. You know, it doesn't take a lot of money. You want to pay for a voter's pamphlet statement. I already mentioned that, but you don't need a great deal of money. Now, if you are running for a major school board position, like the Beaverton School District or the Portland School District, you're going to need some serious money, and you're going to need some serious financial backers if you want to be competitive. If you think you might be running in one of those races, I would research the campaign contribution and expenditure reports of people who have run before. You can find those reports on the Oregon Secretary of State's website, and you can find out about what the winning candidates spent. You can find out about how many votes they got, and that can give you some inkling as to whether or not, with the resources you have at your disposal, you would have a chance to be competitive insofar as projecting your message. I'm not one of those who believes that money is the answer to everything. It's not. But if you are running in a large district, you need some critical amount of support and financial support to enable you to project your message. If nobody knows what you stand for, if you're not able to project your message, then you know, how are they going to know that you're the best candidate for the job? You have to be able to tell them that. You need the resources, at least at some minimal level, to tell them. Yes, Joe, you have a question?
What do you have an outline for the Secretary of State's site to narrow down what
Yes.
section that is in?
Yes, what you can do is I'll get the Secretary of State website here, and you can go to what's called their ORSTAR site. And ORSTAR is their system to whereby people report their financial contributions and expenditures. And you can go to their public page, or you can type in the name of any candidate that's run like in the last 10 years or so. And you can pull up all of their campaign contributions and expenditures so that you'll have some idea of what they spent to win their race. It's not always about money. Sometimes you can win with very little money, but you do need to project your message. Now, if you're running for a smaller position, like a soil and water district. Or,
Okay, could I jump in?
Sure.
This is Margot. I ran for state representative
Yes.
office, Tina Kotek's office.
Yes.
And I had a media blackout on me in Portland. The only media company that interviewed me was KBOO.
Yep.
And the Oregonian blocked me on Twitter when I posted pictures of our recall Cape Brown site. So if you have any ideas about that, I would sure love to hear them.
Well, you know, it's if you get a media blackout, it's not helpful, obviously. But there are other things you can do. There are social media sites you can get on. There are radio stations like KSLM that are conservative that you can get onto. KUIK has always been pretty good. ones that do not, they do not, here, let me take care of this. I'm not a very good multitasker, so I'm going to post this OrStar link. Let's see.
So does Multnomah County have a list of candidates that are currently seated for school board, since
Yes.
that's the special elections that are coming up?
Yes, the special elections, which are coming up in May, if you go to the Multnomah County Election Office website, and every county has their own website, you can see who is in office now, and you can see who has filed for the various positions. Now, bear in mind that what they post on the website is a couple of days behind what's actually been filed, because people file by paperwork and then takes a couple of days before they process it and get it online. If you want the current information, go to the election office and ask to see their list. But if you want to get an idea of what's out there and who the incumbents are, you can go to the county election offices. And
if I may add, this is Margot again. I think our filing starts either February 6th or 8th.
yep,
And if the current person on the board in zone 4, she's pretty anti Antifa. So I've been doing my research and trying to profile her if I'm going to be running against her.
okay, all right, very good. Yeah, the filing, in some counties, the filing dates are already open. Other ones are not quite open yet, but the deadlines are all in March. And before this is over, I'll tell you exactly when the deadline is. Maybe one of you knows already. Once you, I see, Anna, you've got a little one there. I see, very good. I saw you making faces, wasn't sure why. Now I see why. You've got a little one there. That's great. That's great. But anyway, yes, go to your county election office. If you live in Washington County, just Google Washington County elections, Multnomah County elections, whatever it is, Marion County elections, Crook County elections, and you will get a link to their election office, and you will be able to download either on the website itself or a PDF that shows you who has filed thus far for what positions and what positions are available. And as I would say, because everyone, these districts are gerrymandered all over the place, and some of them overlap and some of them don't, I would recommend that you call your election office and simply ask them, this is my name, this is my address, what are all the positions that I'm eligible to run for in the May election? And they will tell you what those positions are. Water district number 4, fire district number 3, whatever they are. And that will give you some idea. Then you can go and see who the incumbents are. Maybe it's somebody that's really good and you don't want to run against them. Or maybe it's an open seat. There's no incumbent running this time, but you'll be able to see what they are. One of the things that the Art of War says is that if you're going to go to war, pick your battlefield. And that's true here. Pick the position you want to run for that you're qualified to do, legally qualified to serve, but have the least resistance in getting elected. And if that means getting elected unopposed, that's great. If you're running for an open seat, that's not quite as good, but that's better, than running against a entrenched 20-year incumbent who's running for re-election. So take a look at what you're eligible to run for, and then make a decision based upon the path of least resistance. This is really key. Getting on the bottom rung of the ladder, if you're looking at public office, is really, really important. Getting on that first rung so that when you run for something higher, when it says prior government experience, you can put Multnomah County Soil and Water District Commissioner instead of none. That's, if we're going to build a cadre of limited government local office holders, it's important that a lot of the people, when they get started, just run for something they can get elected to that they can do. And that builds, that enables you to start building your network of volunteers, your network of donors, your network of fellow office holders who are willing to endorse you if you decide to run for other positions. That's how you build the infrastructure for success within a political movement. The left has done this extremely well. They have just permeated these local offices and generated people who have these networks of volunteers, donors, and fellow office holders. And it's made that, you know, if there's an open seat for the legislature, they say, well, who should we get to run for this open seat? They'll say, oh, we've got a county commissioner, we've got a school board member, we've got somebody that's been on 3-4 boards. And those from the right generally don't. People from the right generally focus on their family or focus on their business. And so they'll say, well, no government experience, but it's a successful business person. That's what happens a lot. And they're running at a disadvantage because they do not have these networks. Part of what Western Liberty Network tries to do is encourage people to build that infrastructure, and running for a local nonpartisan office is a part of building that. So the idea is, you know, unless you have a real strong passion to be a park and rec commissioner, consider being a water commissioner, consider being a soil and water conservation commissioner. Find all the positions that you are eligible to run for, and then do the paperwork for all of them and see where nobody filed as you approach the deadline on the deadline filing date, and hand over the paperwork for the one that nobody filed for. Or if somebody filed for every position you're eligible for, look for the open seat where there is not an incumbent running for re-election. And then if you can't find that, then run against an incumbent. If you don't win, you'll at least get experience and be more successful next time. And you might win, who knows? But these are some strategies to get on the bottom rung of the ladder. Make sure that your family is on board. Make sure that you're willing to spend a little bit of money to get your message out, even if you are running unopposed. Doesn't need to be a lot of money. And then the next part that I'm going for is sort of, as you prepare to run, examine whether there are any skeletons in your closet. For most of these positions, there will be no research along those lines. Almost nobody who runs for park and rec, fire and rescue, water board, those kind of positions, almost nobody goes in and examines the lives of these candidates and tries to do the sort of cancellation that we see these days. It occasionally happens. Somebody once tried to do it to me when I ran for Tualatin Valley Water District in 2015 when I ran for re-election, but it happens very, very rarely. But the reason why I encourage candidates to do this is because, you know, if you had an arrest 10 years ago, if you had a divorce, you know, that was nasty, if you had something that somebody might use against you, it's good to come up with a response to it before it becomes an issue. You know, kind of say to yourself, if I've got this skeleton in my closet, if it doesn't come up, that's great. But if it does come up, this is going to be my response. Come up with your response. Say, like, if you got arrested for something 10 years ago, you can say, you know something, that happened 10 years ago. I learned from it. I paid my debt to society. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people out there at one time or another get crosswise with the law, and I understand them, and I'll be able to relate to them, and I'll make that a part of my public service. You know, that's one kind of response. The point is that if you have any skeletons in your closet and you come up with a response ahead of time, then if nothing happens, that's great. But if something happens, you're not going to be caught blindsided. You will have an articulate response to, you know, whatever someone might bring up about something in your past life. It rarely happens in a local nonpartisan race, but it does happen. And it will happen in the larger races if you become competitive. Somebody told me that, you know, on this call that they were running for Portland School Board. That's a big race. And if you, who was that? Who was that that's running for Portland School Board? Whoever that was.
This is Margot.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm running for the school board, and I also ran for state representative against Tina Kotek already.
Okay, very good. Thank you, and thank you for running. Somebody had to take on Tina, and I'm glad it was you, Margot. So Margot's running for a pretty large.
And could I say?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and could I say, I would have welcomed Tina Kotek and her cadre to actually try to attack me because I have so much information and documentation. It would have exploded out there if the media had actually covered me. So, thank you.
Yep, no problem. A lot of times, attacks on others can backfire. A guy named Lars Hedbor ran against me in 2015 and spent $12,000. I'll get to you in a second, Joe. $12,000 trying to smear me, but it backfired. People don't like it when you attack others for small volunteer positions. And usually if somebody attacks you that way, it'll backfire. It's different in the larger positions. Margot may have to face that. They will definitely attack her if the polling shows that she is becoming competitive, which is why it's really important that she examine, that she have her family on board, and that she's got some resources that she can run a competitive campaign, but that if she has any skeletons in her closet, she'll have responses ready. And it sounds to me like Margot does. And so that's really important. I'm about to go into what I call the candidate self-assessment form. I see that Joe, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, so I got three of us on here that are looking to run for the Gresham Barlow School District, me, Anna, and Raymond.
Excellent.
So I thought there was only 3 open positions, but I just posted the link to the elections in the chat there, and it looks like there's 5 actually. So
really, I see the link. I'm pulling it up myself right here. By the way, I did provide a link in the chat window where people can look at various other candidates with Orstar. And what's the position you're running for? The Joe, you're running for the David Douglas, you said?
no, Gresham Barlow. All 3 of us are
There
in
it
Gresham
is.
Barlow, I believe.
Yeah, there are 5 positions.
Well, we're coordinating together, so I'm not sure. We haven't separated which specific positions we're running for. But me specifically, I do live in Zone 4, so
Okay.
that might be something I can say.
Yeah, they're all 4-year terms except for position 1, which is a 2-year expired term. So that's an open seat. Well, that's fantastic. Okay, great. What I'd like to encourage all of you to do now is to download and print the self-assessment form. You don't need to look at it right now. You can look at it later, but I'm going to go over some of the questions on this form and talk about why it's important to answer them. If you answer these questions, you will be much better prepared to run as a candidate. You will get a much better sense of the kind of campaign you'll run, who you'll help, and it is a precursor to developing a campaign plan, which will be our training next week. But the first question is, my 3 best personal assets as a candidate are this. Maybe you're a good speaker. Maybe you've got some money to spend on a campaign. Maybe you know a lot of people. Whatever they are, come up with 3 things that are assets as a candidate, not necessarily assets as a person, but assets as a candidate. What do you have? And then number 2, what are my 3 greatest personal weaknesses as a candidate? Everybody has them. Maybe you've got something in your background that if the media were to pick it up would hurt you. That could be a liability. Maybe you're not a very good speaker. Maybe you don't have any money. Whatever it is, write down the 3 greatest personal weaknesses you have as a candidate. That's already going to start the wheel spinning inside your mind. These things in my background will be campaign assets. Now, before I was asking you to talk about your 3 best personal assets as a candidate, qualities about yourself, but this is different. This question is 3 things in my background, which will be campaign assets. Maybe you had a job that was relevant to the position that you're running for. Maybe you've held a similar position before. Maybe you worked in private industry in a position that's relevant. Maybe you were a school teacher in a private school or a volunteer in a school, something like that. If you're running for a school board, what are the 3 things in your background that will be campaign assets? And then 3 things in your background that'll be campaign liabilities, something that people might say would be disqualifying for you. It's important to really dig and do some soul searching to answer these questions. These questions, yeah, go ahead.
It's Raymond. I just had a kind of a nuanced question, and if it's too difficult to answer, then I can just table it for later. But I was just curious if one of your assets is like being well connected in terms of knowing people, but you don't want to name drop. Is there sort of a good technique to do that, to where, if you know a lot of teachers and principals and people that have been in the district before, but don't want to necessarily, so you just call that well connected without dropping names, because it's not good to drop names and people don't want their names dropped. So how would you recommend dealing with that?
Oh, there are a couple of ways that you can do that. First of all, there's nothing wrong with saying that I am well ensconced in my community, and that I've been involved in my community for many years and have worked with, many community leaders. There's nothing wrong with saying that. But something else you can do is you can ask these people to endorse you. If they're willing to write a letter saying, I endorse you for such and such a position, then you can simply print off a list of endorsements or put it on your website or your social media, and you're not bragging at all. So it's okay to say that you're deeply ensconced in your community, you're steeped in your neighborhood, you've been involved for a long time, and that you've met a lot of great people. That's perfectly fine to say. And if you want to drop names without dropping names, ask them to drop their own name, ask them to endorse you, and then publicize those endorsements. That is how I'd handle that. Does that help you, Raymond?
Yeah, perfect. That's kind of what I did. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. So you've looked at your assets and liabilities as a candidate, and you've looked at assets and liabilities in your background that might help you or hinder you going forward. The next question is, beyond what you can personally control, these 2 factors will work in my favor. Okay, these are things that relate to your environment. One might be that if you're a conservative, you might live in a district where conservative voters outnumber liberal voters. That is a factor you cannot control, but will work in your favor. Or it might be that an incumbent running for re-election has tarnished their own reputation in some way that's going to create problems for them in getting re-elected. That might be something that is beyond your control, but is working in your favor. What we're talking about here are, what are the tailwinds that you have in the district that you're running for? And then, of course, beyond what you can personally control, what 2 factors will work against you? If you are conservative running in a liberal district, that's a headwind. What we're talking about are different kinds of headwinds. So you can see, if you take these questions point by point, it starts to lay the ground.
If I could, oh, excuse
yeah,
me.
Margot.
Yeah. Is such that I was heavily Democratic for many, many years, including early in my life, a radical feminist. So it's an interesting juxtaposition that now I'm very much became a Trump Democrat and a Trump Republican, and I have conservative values since probably 1991. So I think in part, Tina didn't even want to touch me because I already have a background that anybody in my district could relate to. So if you have some ideas for me with that kind of background that I have, I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
Okay, well, just talking off the top of my head, if you used to be a liberal, now you're not, what you can do is try to turn that into a positive, saying that, I have been a liberal and I understand and have held the same beliefs that many of those who who are of a similar orientation in my district understand. I get it. I understand you. And if I'm elected, I will be able to understand your perceptions. I'll be able to understand your views because I was once very similar to you. And, I still have some respect for a lot of those positions, and I will listen to you. And what's more, because of my past, I will be able to hear you. That might enable you to reach out to some people who are liberal, even though you no longer are. But then you'll be able to say, look, what I want is good policy. The good news is that in a lot of these positions that are nonpartisan, you don't have to create an artificial division of Trump, anti-Trump, pro-Trump, or pro-Biden, anti-Biden. You can just talk as a nonpartisan candidate about good policy. You can say, I understand, hold on a second. Nina, I will answer your question in just a second. But what you can do is you can simply say, you know what, you might be a Republican, you might be a Democrat, I've been both, but none of that means anything to me. I want to run for this local nonpartisan position, and I want to provide good policy to make sure that we educate our kids as best we can. That's what you can say.
Thank you. I like that. Thank you.
Yep, and that just makes party a non-issue. If you're not running for a partisan race, it does not pay to bring party into it unless your district is overwhelmingly of the same party that you are. And people are hungry to get away from that sort of conflict right now. So if you can say, look, I'm not interested in party, you might be of one party, I might be of another party, that's great. But I think on local nonpartisan issues, we can come together on good policies that'll be great for kids, or to provide affordable water, or to make sure that there's no pollution in the watershed, or whatever the issue is. You can say that this is a local nonpartisan issue. It's not a partisan issue. This isn't Congress. This is about taking care of problems where we live. And people will respond positively to that. Nina asked a question, how do you choose which position on a school board to run for? I am in David Douglas. Well, find out what you're eligible to run for first. It may be that you're only eligible to run for a position based on where you live, because a lot of school districts have zones and you need to live in that zone. Call your election office and ask what you're eligible to run for, and they will tell you what to run for. Generally, if you have a choice and there's an open position where an incumbent is not running for re-election, that is better than running against an incumbent. It is really tough in local nonpartisan elections to defeat an incumbent unless they've done something heinous. So find out what you're eligible to run for, and then look for the path of least resistance. Whichever race nobody has filed for, or is an open seat that there's no incumbent for. There's another question. Oregon Abigail Adams Voter Project has a school board questionnaire. This year, we are basing most of the questions on bills in the legislature that affect the school board. After you have filed, we will send you a request to fill out our questionnaire. It is a tool you can post or print, and we also promote your questionnaire on social media and our website. We have many organizations that promote our website. I hope you will consider submitting our questionnaire. That's Donna that provided that. And so if you file for school board, you will get that. Anna writes, we have construction workers here currently being loud. Hopefully my video is not distracting. Well, hasn't been so far. And your microphone is muted at present, so we can't hear a thing. So that's okay. Getting back to this questionnaire, here are 5 people who will help me get elected. You need help. Unless you're running unopposed, you need help. And if you are running unopposed, you should run a campaign anyway for the experience. And to run a campaign, you'll need help. So list the names of 5 people who will help you get elected. This is going to be your core, your inner circle. And you might want to ask them, if you're not sure. I know you can help me. I know you love me or whatever, but would you help me? Do you have the time? Can you help me? Find out and write down the names of 5 people who will fight to get you elected. Conversely, write down the names of 5 people who will work to defeat you. if you're going to be in a contested election, an unopposed election, this usually isn't a problem. Although I will say that in my first election, I faced a write-in candidate. I ran for a local school position in the Beaverton School District, and I was running unopposed on the ballot. But because I'm a limited government activist, some of the parents didn't want me to be on that board, so they ran a write-in campaign against me, pretty impressive one that got 25% of the vote. And I didn't know who these people were. It completely blindsided me. I won the election, but I could have, easily lost. So think about who will work to defeat you. 5 people who will work to get you elected, 5 people who will work to defeat you. And then for whatever position you decide to run for, list 3 issues that you would run on, things that you would put in the voter pamphlet statement. Maybe it might be not approving a new tax. Maybe it would be expanding a water system. Whatever it is, if you're running for a school board, maybe it would be something to do with the curriculum that you would promote to be in the school district that you're dealing with. So in any case, come up with 3 issues that you would run on. And for each issue, here is a basic strength of each issue from a political perspective and a basic weakness of the issue of each perspective. And then finally, say, I will not do the following things, even if not doing them will cost me the election. You don't need somebody in office who has sold their soul to be in office and to seek or maintain power. And you certainly don't want to be one of those people yourselves. So what are some cardinal principles? By cardinal, I mean core principles. What are some cardinal principles that you would not change your position on, even if it means losing the election? If you come up with some, like for a lot of conservatives, their pro-life position is something that they would not settle on, they would not compromise. For others, it might be a tax position. I will not raise taxes. For me, one was no eminent domain with the water district. Whatever it is, write that down and then come up with some sort of an explanation. If people don't like it, something that would mitigate their resistance. For example, on eminent domain, what I would tell people is, look, I don't believe it's right for government to take something that doesn't belong to them. I know that it's in the Constitution. The 5th Amendment says that for a public use, just compensation must be provided if government takes. So it can take, I acknowledge that. And I'll be willing to listen to what everybody has to say. But I think there are ways to get people to voluntarily sell their property. Maybe it means paying them a little over market value. Maybe it means something else. But I want to explore those ways before we use eminent domain to take something that doesn't belong to us. That would be something that I would say on an issue that I'm not willing to compromise on, which could mitigate resistance that I have because of that issue. Think of a cardinal principle, something you would not be willing to compromise on, and then come up with some way to deal with that if somebody came up to you and gave you pushback on that position. A lot of times people will respect that. If you have a good grounding in basic principles and you're able to articulate them and you're able to be consistent, a lot of times people will vote for you even if they don't agree with you, because they admire that you have principles, you can't be bought, you can't be sold. And Ronald Reagan was one of these people. Only about 1/3 of Americans who voted for Reagan actually agreed with him on most of his issues. A lot of them disagreed, but they voted for him because they liked him, they trusted him, they thought he was sincere, and that enabled them to overcome a lot of things. In the school board races, one of the things I would focus on now is empowering parents, saying, look, I know you might support vouchers or oppose vouchers. We can talk about the best ways to improve our educational system, but I'm in favor of giving parents a larger say in the direction of their children's education. That's going to be, yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to say I've been studying strategy and finance. So I put my strategic outline in the chat there if you guys want to take a look at it. One of the things that I recommend, not to be controversial in your teaching, but as running for mayor this last election, I learned, and this goes against, the usual strategy, but a good, what's the word? Title, headline, that catches people's attention. And then for school board, I recommend, a storyline versus policy, to catch people's emotion.
Yeah, that's not a bad strategy. What I tell people when they testify before public boards is, unless they are a recognized expert or a doctor or a scientist or something, don't try to be one. Instead, tell your personal story, because your personal story is usually going to be more politically compelling than even professional testimony on certain things. So, people will ask you questions like, why are you running for school board? Everyone's going to be asked this question. And if they're asked that question, that's your chance to tell your personal story. That's your chance to tell something that is compelling.
Like my personal story would be, so since COVID hit, just to share with you guys, my 16-year-old had previously had straight A's, but now that we're on this online system, and they're, my 16 and my 6-year-old both are ADHD and need that hands-on that they're not getting through the online system. And now she has failing grades. So that would be a good reason for me to get in there and fight to open our schools back up.
Sure. Yeah, COVID creates a lot of opportunities for people who want to run, because of the way it could be argued that the public school system has botched learning during this time. This really provides a lot of credibility for parents. And if you have a story like that, by all means, run with it, go for it. Trisha Hafner has a text. She says, I looked at local positions that were currently open. Nobody sits in them now. I found 6 within my community that needed appointed seats. So I am being appointed next month and will run as an incumbent in the next election. That's very smart. And Raymond agreed. He also said it was very smart. And we did, Joe, get your strategic outline. Thank you, as a Microsoft Word document. But yes, there are open positions now. See if there are any now and see if you can get yourself appointed before the election. It's always good to run as an incumbent. I'll also point out that there are also about 7,000 positions in Oregon, which are appointed positions. These are budget committee positions, planning boards, a lot of these positions that you can check that are not elected, they're appointed, and you can get appointed to those positions as well. Also, there are often positions for which nobody files, even after the deadline. And if that happens, you can run a write-in campaign to get yourself elected by write-in campaign. And that's something that we're going to cover a little bit later. But those are all very, very good points. I appreciate the interaction and the contributions. There's a new message here. Can a husband and wife both run for the same areas? You sure can. No reason why not. I think there have been movies made on that, and at least one Family Guy episode when Peter Griffin and Lois Griffin ran for the same city council seat. And so that was pretty funny. Lois provided lots of policy information, and Peter just said 9/11, and he got elected. So whatever that means. But anyway, that's a very good point. Husband and wife can run for office in the same areas. You can even run for the same office. But if you can get elected to 2 seats on the same board, that's fantastic. Nothing wrong with that. 2 people don't make up a quorum. And there are laws about quorums meeting outside of official meeting places. But 2 people do not constitute a quorum on Most boards of 5 or 7 members. So yes, the answer is yes. So those are the basic things that I have about assessing yourself as a candidate for local nonpartisan office. I hope this has been helpful to some of you. This is not exhaustive. It's just a place to get started. But what you'll find is that if you see what your best personal assets are, your best personal liabilities are, the things in your background that will help you and hurt you, things about your race in your district that you cannot control that'll work for you or against you, 5 people who will help you get elected, 5 people who will work to defeat you, the basic issues that you're going to run on, the basic stories that you're going to tell, what the strengths and weaknesses of these things are, and then what it is that is core to your belief system that you will not compromise on. If you use the sheet that I've posted for you in the chat area, you can also download it from the westernlibertynetwork.org website and going to the training tab. If you use this worksheet, what you will find is after you're done with it, you will have what I call a proto campaign plan. You will have some idea of the kind of campaign you will be able to run, who your volunteers are going to be, who you're going to have to overcome, what the issues are you're going to run on, what challenges you're going to have about your background or assets you're going to have about your background. And the next training that we'll have along these lines will be about actually doing a written campaign plan. We always recommend that anyone who runs does a written campaign plan. If it's not in writing, you do not have a plan. And in that, you'll come up with specific objectives, a district overview analysis, you'll come up with a campaign strategy. You'll decide upon approaches toward achieving objectives. You'll build a campaign organization. You'll come up with a campaign calendar, which is really critical. Develop a budget and come up with a fundraising plan to help fund your budget. These things are all very important. But this training was just supposed to be a real light primer on assessing yourself as a candidate. Are there any other questions that we have or comments today? Oh, where do you find the forms that you speak of? You can get them by going to the training tab of the westernlibertynetwork.org website, and you can download whatever it is that you want. Joe, you've given me a phone number. Are you inviting people to call you, or?
Yeah, I just want to say I run a local nonprofit as well. So anybody else in here that's running on the east side of on the East County Multnomah, if you want hands-on help, we offer that. And me and Raymond both ran for previous office, so we got some experience in that. And I also have resources that will help out for spending less money and knowing some ideas to and connected with the Republican Party as well, the local Republican Party, that they'll be delving out resources as well. So just want to let everybody know that, and if you want to contact me, that's my number there.
Okay, that's fantastic. Great. We should compare notes sometime on some of these trainings. Maybe we can adopt each other's best practices and help. What's the name of your nonprofit?
It's the Conservative Wing, so you can look that up. We're in transition for a different website platform because it's kind of messy right now, but you can look at it at theconservativewing.com.
Okay, very good, very good. Now, Tricia, Tricia says, yes, I went to the city page and printed the application form, applied to the Parks Board that had 4 open spots, and got a call back on the next day. So it looks like Tricia is going to be a local office holder very soon and will be running for re-election as an incumbent. So good for you, Tricia. Rock and roll. That's fantastic. And a couple of people have said goodbye. Are there any other questions or comments from you folks? Okay, so what we'll do is we will call it a day, and please stay tuned to your email or social media, and you will be informed about future upcoming Saturday afternoon trainings from Western Liberty Network. And your contributions, not just financial, but just in terms of information and material, are always appreciated as well. So anyway, thank you very much for your time today. God bless you. And I hope to be seeing all of you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Good luck to all of you running.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.